Hey, how's it going, everybody? And welcome back to another episode of Drivin and Survivin. It's my new podcast here on the channel, and it's a podcast about exactly what it sounds like. It's a podcast about driving and surviving. It's about cars and life. And this is episode 2, where I kind of wanted to talk about some car dealership stories that I had and just car dealerships in general. But before I get into that, I want to remind you guys that these podcasts are interactive. So if you want a chance to be featured on the podcast, you can send in a video, you can send in an audio note, you can send in a text question, whatever you want, whatever's on your mind, send it in to the email jamals.garage@gmail.com. I'll pop it up at the top of the screen, jamals.garage@gmail.com, all lowercase. And when you do send those in, please be sure to include your name and where you're calling from, or where you're sending in your audio note from. Be sure to include that so that I can include that in these episodes whenever we go over whatever you might have. So I didn't get any submissions for this week's episode, which I was kind of expecting that, just because we did just start this thing last week. But if you guys want, you can send those in to that email address, and I'll try to feature as many of them as I can on these episodes. So as I mentioned, guys, we're back for episode 2, and I mentioned this last episode, but I wanted to make a episode just talking about car dealerships, right? Because I've got some crazy stories that I wanted to share with you guys, and just talk about the business of car dealerships in general and things that you can do to better prepare yourself whenever it does come time to buy a car, if you are going through a dealership or whatever. So here we are getting into it, but before I wanted to get into the episode, I actually wanted to talk about kind of a current event, right? So I'm thinking for the format of these podcasts, like I start off with like a current event. First of all, introduce the episode, talk about anything that might be pressing at the beginning of the episode. And actually, that reminds me, one thing I forgot to talk about last episode was be sure you guys are liking these. If you like them, subscribe to the channel to stay up to date, and leave comments with any feedback you guys have, because it really helps these videos get views, and it really helps the kind of get out there, and it really helps with visibility and just growth of the channel overall. So if you guys could do me a huge favor, just dropping a like on the video goes a long way for me. So at the very minimum, if you guys could just like these episodes, it'd be awesome and greatly appreciated. So for today's current event, it kind of ties into the subject of this video. I wanted to talk about just the state of the car market and kind of the economy as a whole, right? So as long as you don't live under a rock, God, I cannot talk today. And forgive me, I have like this weird congestion going on right now. So like, if my voice sounds weird, that's why. But as long as you don't live under a rock, you know that there's been a significant global event that's been going on over the last 2 to 3 years. A lot of you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a certain sickness that's been going around, and I can't say it because YouTube will flag the video. But because of that, it caused a bunch of these factories that produce parts or produce cars to shut down for a while, right? And if you guys know supply chain, if you shut something down for a little bit, it has major downstream effects. So because of that, there was a short period of time when parts for cars were not being produced, and that had downstream effects, like I just mentioned, and it's caused a severe decrease in the supply of new cars available, right? And so there was a lot of cars sitting. There probably still is a lot of cars sitting there just waiting on a certain few parts, and they're not being sent to dealerships to be sold. And if you guys have taken any type of an economics class, you know supply and demand. It's kind of economics 101. When your supply goes up, when your supply goes down, your demand stays the same. The price of those parts or cars are going to go up. So that's kind of what's been going on, right? So it's caused car values to increase like we've never seen before. Before, you used to just accept the fact that as soon as you drove a car off the lot, it was going to be worth like $10,000 less the next day. But for like the first time ever, or for the first time that I can remember, these car values have actually started to increase, something that we would have never thought would have happened before this large global event happened, right? So like I mentioned, we've seen car values increase like we've never seen before. As I mentioned, you drive a car off the lot, you lose its value. And then also, like, some of the things that I'm seeing is quality control issues happening, right? So there's manufacturers taking features out of cars just because they can't get the parts. and they're not decreasing the prices of the car since they're taking these features away. So one of my buddies was talking to me about the new Ford Raptor, and apparently like they've taken a lot of the interior features out of the car or out of the truck. Like there's no more RGB lighting. They've taken certain interior bits out of it, but they're charging the exact same for it. So it's kind of crazy. Like the 2021 Raptor is almost a more desirable spec now than the 2022. Even the 2022 is newer. So, and then they're not decreasing the price of these by any more because people are still, buying them just because there's just a severe lack of cars on the market, and there's an automotive problem right now. So I just kind of want to talk about the used market right now. It's an insane time to try to buy a car, especially if you're looking for something that's like, really nice. Like me personally, I've been eyeing a few things that I want to possibly move into next after the C5 Corvette. But just because of the state of the car market, the stuff is just so overpriced that I'm just not willing to pay for that at the current time. I will say though, I always look weekly on cars.com just at things, and a lot of these cars that are for sale, like used cars specifically, are sitting at these dealerships a lot longer than they normally would. So I think people are finally starting to calm down a little bit on just buying cars, whether or not that's because of gas prices or uncertainty, or a lot of people are trying to time the market right now. Like if this used car bubble pops and you're one of the people that bought a car right before that happened, and then boom, your car's worth like $10,000 less the next day, you definitely don't want to be in a situation like that. So it's just insane right now. And I know there's people out there that are still paying these like ridiculous prices because quite frankly, like they have no option. But right now this used car market is it's just wild, and it really sucks because you were looking at things pre-pandemic and it was like, oh yeah, like, you thought, hey, that was kind of pricey then, but looking back on it, there were like amazing deals, and you really wish that you could go back to that. Like just for example, C6 ZR1s, like now they're like the cheapest one is like 70 grand, and like in 2019 pre-pandemic, they were like selling for, you could find some in like the low 50s, like even high 40s for like a higher mileage one, like an 80,000 mile ZR1 you could maybe find for like 49, 50-ish, but now like minimum they're like 69 to 70 grand. But as I mentioned, to that point, a lot of these ones that have been for sale for like weeks now, or months now even, are just sitting there. So I think something interesting is going to happen. I think we're kind of on the verge of things to maybe finally start calming down a little bit. But we're still definitely in kind of those inflated prices of the used car market. So some of the things that I think about is, how long is it really going to last? Because as I mentioned, we seem to be kind of in a holding pattern right now, and dealerships really aren't coming down on prices, but at the same time, people aren't really buying. And then obviously the crazy gas prices that we're experiencing right now doesn't really put many people in a great situation to justify spending so much money on a new car. So, those are some things I've been thinking about. Timing it is probably impossible. I wish I could, if you want to upgrade, I wish you could know when, hey, sell your car now, it's going to come down, make the most money you can, and then get back into another car for as cheap as possible when that market does come down. So obviously when you're trying to time the market with anything, it's nearly impossible. And then in general, like also, like where are people just getting money from to just buy these, like pay overinflated prices? Because I mean, there are some people out there, a lot of people out there actually, that they're just accepting the fact that these things have gone up so much in price, and they're just like overpaying for things right now. So, I don't know if those people have just accepted the fact that they're going to lose a bunch of money whenever that market does eventually come down, but it just seems like people are just like, it just seems like everything is going up in price and people are just still continuing to buy it, and there's still like a shortage in the amount of like a shortage of availability and competition to get these things. So I don't know. It's just crazy to me when I think about that. And then finally, like how bad will the pop be if there is a pop, right? Like, are we going to wake up one day and find out the car you just bought a month ago is worth $20,000 less the next day. Obviously, for the people that have bought cars in this market, I really hope the pop isn't that bad. But what do you guys think? Are you guys of the opinion that, you're waiting to see how bad that pop is or how much the market comes down before buying your car? Or have you just kind of accepted the fact that it's really high right now? You've bought it. Are you worried about it? For those of you guys that have purchased a car, definitely leave a comment below and just let me know kind of what you're thinking or what your opinion is on this whole situation, because right now it's definitely not a great situation. It's very discouraging too, because, when you think back to those times and you're like, man, I wish I had really like bought something back then, or, it was like if you had only known, right, you could have bought something, sold it for more money, or just really, I don't know. I really miss the cheaper prices. I don't know where I'm going with this, but I just wish I had known what was going to happen, like with everybody, I'm sure. But it's just kind of crazy to think about that, these cars have gone up like $20,000 in value just because of these unprecedented times that we're in. And to think that they might not even get back down to where they were that one, at that time. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But anyways, today I want to discuss car dealerships, because I mentioned this briefly in the last episode, but I've got some pretty crazy car dealership stories, and I want to put like some PSAs out there for people, because I almost got screwed buying a C5Z before the one that I have now. And I want to kind of alert you guys as to some of these tactics that you guys want to look out for, and definitely some things to be wary about. So let's go ahead and get into it. I wanted to start off with the story of how I almost got screwed my Corvette. As I mentioned, this was before the Corvette that I own now. I went to go look at one particular car before this at a dealership in Dallas. I'm not going to name the dealership just because I don't want to, I told them at that time, I told them that, give me this back and you'll never hear from me again. So it's definitely happened, but I don't want to mention their name just for, those reasons. So you guys already know the story with the G35. That was like my first car. That was a cash deal. Everything there went smoothly, besides salesmen like forcing upsells or whatever. That's kind of understandable. But in general, deals typically go a lot better when you're paying cash. Cash was always kind of something that you could use to get a lower price. You're like, hey, like all cash. Everyone knows you're paying cash. The cars tend to be cheaper, or they tend to be willing to take off more money for like a quick cash deal. So I don't know if that's still the same case, because obviously there's a lot of demand for cars. So, I guess dealerships have gotten a little bit more leverage since the demand is so high. It's just like if you were to sell your house, right? You'd have like 20 buyers knocking on your door, and they're like throwing money at you to try to get them to take your offer. It's kind of a similar situation to the car market right now, just because there's just such a lack of supply or availability on the market. So that's it's something to consider, right? So the story of the Corvette I almost bought is crazy. So to set the story up here, this was back in 2016. I was still attending college. I was in my third year of college, and this was when I had my G35. I had the G35, and this was after my motorcycle and my Miata that I talked about last video. So it was definitely the time that I was considering, looking into getting a Corvette. I wanted to get rid of the G35. I was finally over it. Wanted to get something faster. Wanted to get something rear-wheel drive. Wanted to get something manual. So that's kind of where I was. And because of this whole situation, like I was driving my G35, I was still in school. My parents were very against the idea of me getting another car before I got out of school. They're just like, focus on your studies, finish your school, and then you can get a different car, right? Because the G35, despite having 190,000 miles at the time, it still ran like a champ. It was super reliable, no major issues, and it was completely paid off. So they were very against the idea of me trying to, get a different car or have a payment while I was still in school and have that to worry about while I was trying to, pass all my classes. So it's kind of where we're at. As I mentioned, my parents were very against the idea, and because of that, they told me that I'd be on my own if I wanted to go get that car. They weren't going to help me. They weren't going to co-sign for me. They said, if you want to buy another car, we're very against the idea. You're going to have to go do it all on your own. So this is kind of my situation, right? Like I didn't have, I didn't know much about credit or financing. I had a good credit score. I had one credit card and that was it. And I've made videos about things that you want to make sure you have when you buy a car or finance a car. So obviously you guys already know, if you've seen that video or if you know anything about how automotive financing works, one credit card is a major issue. And it's something that banks don't like to see that you only have one of if they're going to be giving you a loan. So that was kind of the situation there. I was working at Discount Tire part-time. I was working like 30 hours a week. I was making decent money. I wasn't making a lot of money by any means, but I still did live at home. I didn't pay rent. My parents were super awesome. I was in school, didn't have to pay rent. Most of my school was being paid for by scholarships and grants, so I didn't really have many school expenses. So most of my money was just spent on like my cell phone bill or just like food and gas. Those were my only expenses. So worked at Discount Tire part-time. I was making decent money, enough money to know that I could afford the loan I was looking at, right? So definitely should have done more homework when I went to go purchase this car, because as I mentioned, I had one credit card and I didn't know what it took to get a loan for a car. Things banks likes to see is they want 3 established lines of credit. They like to see credit age, so like the length of time that you've had credit accounts, and they like to see a good credit score. I definitely, I had a Discover card and they had this little FICO score tracker, so I knew like my FICO credit score, and I was like, oh, like it's pretty decent, like comparatively to like the data that they had on their site. It's like, this is kind of where you stack up according to the average of people your age and kind of your same, financial status or whatever. And so I had a decent credit score and I had that one credit card. I had never missed a payment before, so I was like, okay, I should be good, right? But I definitely should have done more homework and possibly gotten like a pre-approval prior to going up to this dealership. But I didn't do that, and I started looking for a C5 Z06. I think the price point around that time for like a lower mileage one, like say 80,000 miles or less, was around $21,000 to $20,000. So that's kind of what I was looking to spend. And with my G35 trade-in, I think I would have like $14,000 to spend, $15,000 to spend, just because of the money I had saved up. And with the trade-in, I was hoping to have around that. So like I was really only going to be financing maybe $7,000 to $8,000 for the car. But I didn't realize that banks don't like to finance things that are that old. So like in 2016, a 2003 car that's already like 13 years old, and most banks don't really like to finance cars that are that like older than 10 years or whatever. So I didn't realize that at the time either. But anyways, I started looking. I went and test drove some Corvettes at some other dealerships, and I definitely got rejected by a lot of them, just telling me that, hey man, we can't get you approved. Try getting a co-signer, yada yada yada. And I already knew that my parents weren't gonna co-sign on it. I didn't really have anyone else to ask because they were still very against the idea of me getting a car. It wasn't that they wouldn't allow me to get a car, period. But they were against the idea enough to not be willing to help me get it, right? So they're like, if you can do it, go do it, but we're not going to be involved with this in any way, just because if something were to happen, they just didn't want to be like, I told you so. They wanted me to like focus on school first and get a car later. But anyways, I had gone to a few dealerships. I had definitely been rejected by a lot of dealerships, and at that point, like, you get very discouraged and even kind of desperate a little bit. And so I remember this car popping up, and it was Electron Blue C5 Z06. I think it was a 2002. And I remember at the time it had a few mods on it. You could tell just by looking at it. It had an axle back exhaust on it, and it had some blacked out pieces on it. And it was at this dealership in Dallas. As I mentioned, I don't want to mention their name just because I think they're still operational. But I I had called them and I was like, and I'd call them from school because I wanted to go look at it after school this one day. And I asked them if they had it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we have it." And I kind of told my story, right? I was like, "I've been looking at these things for a while now. I've been rejected by many different places. What are the odds that, I would get approved for a loan for this thing before I spent all this time and money driving up there or whatever?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, like we can help you out. Go ahead and fill out our credit application." I was like, "I'm not gonna lie to you. Like I don't have like, what was I going to say? Like, I haven't been approved by many other people or if anybody at that point. And so like, I'm not very confident that I'll get approved." And they're like, "Oh, like we've got special financiers. Like we deal with people in your situation. Like we definitely could do whatever we can to get you approved." And they're like, "Okay, let's go fill out that credit application." So I did. And then they called me back shortly after, about an hour after they called me back, and they were like, "Hey, like great news. We got you approved." And I was like, "You guys got me approved?" I was like, "I've been rejected by 3 or 4 different dealerships." They're like, yeah, we got you approved. I was like, by that point, like I was so desperate that I was so fired up that I learned I got approved. I didn't ask any other questions. I was like, "Oh, sweet. Like, can I come look at that car tonight by chance?" I think they closed at like 6, and I was going to get out of class at like 3:30 or 4, and they're like, yeah, definitely. They're like, do you want to go ahead and put a deposit on the car just so that it doesn't sell? And I was like, "Okay, yeah, I'm pretty serious about this thing." I was like, "Yeah, let's do it. Like, is it refundable?" And he's like, "Yeah, definitely refundable." He's like, "Just put a little deposit down." So I was like, "How much?" He's like, "Let's just do $500. The car was like, I think the car was 21.9, and it had like 40-ish thousand miles on it. So I was like, "All right, that's fine, $500, whatever." So I gave him my credit card information over the phone. Something that I should not have done. Be real weary about just handing out money and giving your credit card information over the phone, especially to a dealership that you've never really met. And so I gave him a deposit. But, at the end of the day, I was thinking it's a dealership. It's a legitimate place of business. They're not going to do anything with that information. And they said it was refundable, so they'd give me the money back if I had any issues, right? So I did that. And then what I didn't do was, read reviews for that dealership. Like I should have done my homework at that point. I just assumed that all these dealerships were legitimate. Since they had got me approved already, like I was already kind of in the door and the deal would go smoothly. So like I said, I gave that deposit over the phone so that they could hold the car for me or whatever. And I drove up there after school. So a few mistakes there. Definitely should have read reviews before going up to that dealership, because later I learned that this dealership had been involved. This wasn't the first time something like this happened, but I didn't. I was just kind of very excited that I had gotten approved because everyone else was rejecting me, and I just wanted the car so bad at that point because I was just tired of being rejected. So drove up there. Went in after class right before closing time. I don't ever recommend going to dealerships before closing time because at the end of the day, those guys all want to go home. So sometimes they can try to rush a deal or whatever. And especially if it's like before a weekend or something, or like end of the month, like they're really looking to sell cars. So, it can get kind of shady sometimes. Not saying that with every dealership, but with certain dealerships it can. So I got up there. It was like an hour. By the time I got there, it was like an hour before closing. I think I got there like 5 p.m. They closed at 6 p.m. I saw the car, and at the time, like I was like, man, this car looks like it's a different shade of blue, almost like it's been repainted. And the guy's like, no, of course not. Like he's like, it's clean title, like clean Carfax, whatever. He's like, yeah, the Carfax are clean or whatever. And I was like, okay, like. And honestly, like, to this day, I don't know if it was, but like, it seemed like it was just after seeing so many Electron Blue Corvettes and seeing that one, like, call me crazy. But it looked repainted, and like after the whole stuff went down, it may have been, honestly. So I got there, I drove the car. It was a nice car. It drove well. The salesman was super cool, kind of a younger dude. And like the dealership was like legit. It's one of those used car dealerships that's like in a warehousing district, like a business park, not like an open car lot, but just like, there's a little drive up ramp that go like a forklift ramp almost that would go into like a warehouse. And so all the cars were in the warehouse, and like, they had legit cars in that dealership, and there was other people there shopping around. So, like, there was no, like, nothing about the dealership gave me red flags just by looking at it. And obviously I was super excited because, like, they'd already been approved, and, like, I was, like, so excited to, like, just get the deal over with. And so once I drove the car, I got back, and it was, like, pushing right up against closing time. It was like 5:30. And they were definitely, like, looking back, like, they were definitely trying to rush the deal a little bit. They're like, oh, like, we're about to close, but, like, we can make this deal happen for you. Like, the banks will stay open so that we can get this deal done, which, like, I don't know how true that is, banks staying open just to get my deal done or whatever. But, they were really trying to push this deal on me. They're like, you really like the car? I was like, yeah, like, I love the car. Like, how long have you been looking? And I told them, and they're like, oh, like, this is definitely the car for you. We got you approved, whatever. Like, we just got to get this paperwork done. So they're like, how do you want to do the deal? And I told them, like, oh, I've got, like, this $10,000 cashier's check. I already put down a $500 deposit. I wanted to trade in my Infiniti at the time, which, interestingly enough, they really didn't care much about the Infiniti. Like, they didn't even, like, take it to appraise it or anything. They're just like, oh, like, do you have the title for it? And I'm like, yeah, like, okay, you're good. Like, that's kind of all they said about it. I was like, oh, okay. And when most dealerships, like, they'll drive the car around, they'll take it into, like, their shop, they'll inspect it before they even give you any like, before they even think about giving you an appraised value for the car, how much they'd take for it. So that was also kind of weird. There's little red flags popping up here and there, and I should have realized it at the time. But, like, I was just so excited to potentially get this Corvette that, like, I don't know, I guess I just wasn't thinking straight. So they had me go ahead and insure the car, because obviously, like, if you're buying a car, you got to make sure you have insurance on it before you drive it out the lot. So I went ahead and called Progressive. I got insurance on the car. They're like, do you have that cashier's check? Like, we're getting here late. The owner's about to leave. He's going to go deposit the checks, make sure he has a check before he leaves out of here. So I was like, oh, yeah, for sure. So, like, I gave him the cashier's check. This was all, like, he had me insure the car, and he took the cashier's check before I saw any paperwork on, like, the loan terms at all, or before I knew anything about the loan terms. So, like, there were just some scam artists working at that dealership, honestly. And, like, they knew exactly what they were doing. And I was super young at the time, and I had never really financed a car before. And my parents weren't theirs. And, like, so many red flags that, like, any experienced person who's bought a car before would kind of know. But, like, I was just so dumb and naive at that time that I was just kind of going along with it. So I gave the cashier's check up, and the owner took off. Like, he went home. I don't know where he went. I never saw the owner, but I'm pretty sure I knew who it was at that time. But he kind of took off, and then, like, at the end of the day, like, all the other salesmen are leaving. So, like, you have to, like, kind of imagine the setting, right? Like, people are leaving out the door. I'm, like, the last one left in the office. There's, like, me and the salesman, like, the finance manager or whatever. Like, everyone else is leaving. Like, they're shutting lights off and stuff. So, like, it gives you kind of, like, a rushed feeling. Like, when you're at Target and, like, the lights go off and they start making announcements, it's like, oh, like, you better hurry up and get your stuff and get out. So it's kind of like that feeling. So finally, like, after taking all that stuff, the car had insurance on it. I already agreed to how much I was going to be paying monthly for the insurance and stuff. He finally walked in with a stack of paper, which was, like, the loan terms of the car. And he's like, all right, well, we got you approved. He's like, he puts the paper down. He's like, just sign here, here, and here. And I pick up the pen to sign it. And that's when I saw the payment for the first time. Like, typically when you go into a dealership, they, like, you negotiate your loan term rates. Like, oh, like, how much of a payment can you afford? This is how much the car is going to be. Like, he didn't do any of that. He just, like, okay, sign here, here, and here. And then that's the first time I saw the payment. And I had kind of calculated a payment in my head. I was thinking, like, okay, this is going to be, for the loan that I'm getting, the amount, it should be around, like, $200 a month, right? It was, like, $350 a month. And I was like, what the heck? Why is the payment so high? He's like, what do you mean? I was like, yeah, this payment is way more than I calculated. He's like, what'd you calculate? Like, we got you approved. Like, you have to realize you haven't really financed a car before, so it may be a little bit higher than what you're used to. And then, like, I start flipping through the pages, and I finally see the interest rate. And I think the interest rate was, like, no kidding, I think it was like 26 or 27.99% interest on an automotive, like, on a car loan. I was like, wait a second, this is way higher than, like, something that I would even remotely agree to. They're like, yeah, well, like, you don't have much credit history or whatever, and, like, but we did get you approved, and it's a little bit more than what you were probably thingy that you're going to pay, but like, it's whatever. I just sign it. Like, you're approved. And I was like, no, I can't do this. Like, I was like, I can't even afford this if I wanted to. And I was just thinking in the back of my head, like, my parents would kill me if I signed for this car right now. And it just kind of all fell apart. And like, at that point I started to finally feel like, hey, like, these people like maybe were trying to take advantage of me, because like all the red flags started to come to kind of the forefront, and kind of like realization that, hey, this deal might not be legit. And so I was like, dude, I can't do this. I got to back out of this deal. I was like, you know what? The insurance thing, not that big of a deal. I'll just call, have them cancel it. I haven't paid anything yet. And I was like, I need my cashier's check back. You know, the $10,000 is like, because I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this like, I'm not signing for this loan. Like, the interest rate is just way too high. And like, the salesman like got super offended and like kind of defensive about it. I was like, what do you mean? Like, I mean, people back out of deals all the time. Like, I can't do it. I can't afford it. Like, I'm not gonna sign for something I can't afford. And I was like, I need my cashier's check back. He's like, well, I can't give you the cashier's check back because the owner already took off for the day and he has it, gave it to him. And I was like, why would you let that leave the building before making sure the deal was done? He's like, oh, well, the owner had to go. This is not like by the way, this is not like it's not like a dealership where, like, you know, it's not like a brand dealership. It's not like a Chevy dealership or a Toyota dealership. It's like just one of those like used car lots, like, you know, those kind of privately owned used car lots. It's one of those. It's not like a legit dealership. So he had, for whatever reason, the owner had left for the night with my cashier's check, and they told me that if I wanted it back, I'd have to come get it back tomorrow. So I left there. I had also at the time been emailing another salesman about the Corvette that I now own that was at a actual Chevrolet dealership. He's like, yeah, we've got the car. He's like, you want to come take a look at it? It was kind of in the same area because I live on like the west side of the Metroplex, and I was already on the east side of the Metroplex. So I was like, yeah, I'll go look at that car after work. After I got done with that dealership. So I left that dealership pretty frustrated. I didn't have my cashier's check. They gave me the keys back to my G35, so I was driving my Infiniti back home, and so I stopped at that dealership on the way home. I saw the car that I own now. It was super nice, super clean. The shade looked right on, like, the shade of blue on this car looked right, and I was like, dude, I knew I wasn't crazy. Like, that car looks different. This car was higher mileage, but it was $15,000, so it was something that I could afford to buy with just straight cash and not have to worry about a loan at all. So at that point, I had been rejected so many times for a loan. The only loan I had been approved for was like a 26.99% interest loan. So I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to go on a limb here. I'm going to buy the higher mileage car. It was only a single owner car. And so that was something else that really appealed to me, the fact that it was just a single owner car. Obviously, whoever had it took really good care of it, really cared about the car to have it that long. So because 2003 to 2016 is 13 years. Someone had that car for 13 years, so they obviously loved it and took really good care of it. So I had decided that night, you know what, I'm going to buy this car. I'm going to go back to the other dealership in the morning. I'm going to get my cashier's check from them, and I'm going to bring it back to this Chevrolet dealership and buy this one. So I went home that night, and it was finally like when I got home that night that I started reading reviews for that dealership, and I started realizing that there's a bunch of scam artists that worked at the dealership, and that things like this have occurred before to other people. There were stories on the reviews like, yeah, I traded a car into these people, and like a month later, my bank called me that I originally financed the other car through, telling me that the dealership never paid my car off, and that I had all these delinquent payments due on the car loan for a car that I had already traded in, and just like a bunch of nightmare stories. And even like, I saw that their Better Business Bureau accreditation had been revoked. I know there's some places that like just don't have it or don't apply for it, but like they had it and it got revoked. So like obviously something super serious happened. And that just like my anxiety was peaking that night, because like, dude, what if there's a possibility that these guys like will do something with my cashier's check and just like not give me my money back, and then like I'll end up like $10,000 down just because of my stupidity. So I was super worried that night, but I was like, you know what, everything hopefully will be fine. I'll go get that cashier's check in the morning, and hopefully they like kind of understand, just give it back to me, right? The owner gives it back to me if he's running a legitimate business, right? So the next morning, I went in at kind of opening time of that dealership because I wanted to get it from there, take it to the bank, and get it transferred for the Chevrolet dealership, because I was talking to the other salesman and I was like, definitely hold this car for me. I'm gonna be back. I'll buy it all cash, no issues with it. And he's like, okay, like we'll try to hold on to it for you, because I was really fired up about getting that car, because I wouldn't have to get a loan on it, and instead of spending money on monthly payments, I'd be able to modify the car, right? So I went back and I was thinking, I'm just going to get my money from these people, no issue. They're going to give it to me, and then I'll just go back to the other dealership. So I got there to the first dealership that tried to scam me with that high interest rate, and they didn't tell me about it the owner took my cashier check home, right? So I got there to get it back. The owner was not there at the time when I came into the dealership. And I went in there and I was talking to the employees. I was like, hey, like, is the owner here? Like, do you guys have my cashier's check? They're like, no, the owner still has it. They're kind of beating around the bush. They're like, you sure you don't want this car? Like, what happened? Like, you were so excited about getting this car and now you don't want it. And like, we can still make the deal happen. And like, it's just the terms of the loan. Like, this is how it is when you don't have any credit or whatever. And like, they kept trying to push me to get this car. And I was like, no, dude, like, truth be told, like, I found another car last night and that's the one I want. And they're like, what do you mean you found another car? Like, we got the cheapest one in the area. And like, they like even like forced me to show them the listing of the car. And they're like, oh, dude, you don't want that. That thing's a piece of junk or whatever. And I was like, dude, just give me my cashier's check. I'll get out of your hair. You guys will never hear from me again. I just want it back. I can't afford the car, straight up. Like, I just can't afford your car. I don't know what to tell you. And so the owner was just not coming. They were just refusing to work with me. And then eventually the owner did come in like 3 hours after the dealership opened. This dude comes in driving a Rolls Royce. He's literally driving a Rolls Royce Ghost. He parks his car. He gets out. I was kind of outside in the parking lot. I walked up to him. I was like, hey, like, I came to purchase that. Like, I'm super nice about it. I was like, hey, I came to look at that Corvette yesterday. I gave him a cashier's check. I backed down the deal. Like, I just need my cashier's check back. And he like looks at me and he starts like running to the front door. He's like, I don't know you. He's like, I don't know who you're talking to. He's like, I don't know anything about you. And he just went inside. And I was like, what the heck, dude? And I went in there and like he was like refusing to talk to me. And the employees were like, we don't know. Like, they were just like, they just were acting stupid. Like, they didn't know what was going on. And so like, I felt really defeated at this point. Like, I had been at that dealership for like 4 hours almost, and they just were not budging. So, you know, young me, I called the police, and the police came to that dealership while I was in the parking lot. They just sent an officer out to talk to me, and I was like, yeah, you know, I explained the whole situation to him. I was like, they're holding my cashier's check hostage. They're not giving it back to me. And the cops were like, well, unfortunately, like, we can't do anything about this. You'd have to take it to like small claims court or whatever. And then I'm like thinking like, dude, this is gonna take forever. Like, if I take these people to court to get them to give me my money back, like, it's gonna be a whole thing. This other Corvette's gonna sell that I already told them that I wanted, that I like was the perfect car for me. And so he's like, yeah, sorry. He's like, unless the people here didn't like push you down and take your money, I can't really do anything about it. So I was like, all right, well, I understand. So he left. There were a few buddies that I had in that area that kind of had mutual friends of people that had done deals with that dealership before. So I called one of my buddies and I explained the situation to him. He's like, oh, you're at that dealership? I was like, yeah. He's like, dude, those guys are crooks. He's like, I have like a cousin who's a lawyer, and she's actually dealt with these people before. So if you want, you can give her a call. So this is all like happening the same day, the same time. So I'm in the parking lot just trying to work these things out, trying to figure out how I can get my money back from these people, because they're literally holding like $10,000 of mine hostage, and they will not give it back to me. And I need that money because I wanted to go to the other dealership to buy the other car. And like, it was getting later in the day. I had work. I had like took off work early in the morning. I still had to go to work later in the day. So I was trying to make all these things happen. Like, I thought it was just going to be a 10-minute thing. And like, here I am sitting there for 4 hours. So I called I called my buddy's cousin, and she was telling me over the phone. She's like, yeah, I've dealt with these guys before. She's like, they're like scam artists in the way they try to make deals. He's like, and she was like, the lawyer was like, yeah, I've sent letters over there, and they seem to have worked, you know, and they gave money back to people that they were holding hostage, similar to a situation like yours. And I was like, okay, well, how much does that letter cost? Like, how much would it cost you to do that for me? And she's like, oh, it'd be like $400-ish, and like, and it takes like, it's like a few week process. And now I'm thinking like, dude, like, this is gonna take weeks, and I should have never given these guys my money in the first place before seeing the loan terms and all this crap. So I was like, you know what, let me think about it and I'll call you back. And so at that point, I was like, you know what, I'm going to walk in there and be a little bit more aggressive with them and see if I can see one last time if I can get this thing before I go back home and just accept defeat and hire a lawyer to try to get my money back. So I went in one last time. I was definitely a bit more aggressive. I was like, yo, let me talk to the owner. Like, I know he's back there. I saw him walk back there. You can't tell me that the guy that drove the Rolls Royce to the dealership is not the owner of the freaking dealership. And like the owner, those the whole time was like hiding in the back office. He never came back. He never said anything to me. And like even after I got my cashier's check back, eventually I had never even like he never came out to say anything to me. So they were beating around the bush, and I was just really persistent with them. And finally, like one of the managers, like the only cool dude that worked at the dealership, took me to the back. He's like, "Dude, what's going on? Like, explain to me what's going on." I was like, I explained the whole situation to him. I was like, I got approved for this loan. They didn't tell me what the loan terms were going to be. They made me insure the car. They took my cashier's check all before they even told me. They tried to force me to sign the documents, and I was explaining to him. He's like, yeah, well, you know, you can't just back out on deals like this. You've agreed to something. I was like, yeah, I like verbally agreed. I didn't sign anything saying that I had to purchase the car. Like, you guys can't force me to purchase a car. Like, it's just, you can't do that. And he's like, are you sure? And he's like, I told him the car I was gonna get at the other dealership. He's like, this is like high mile. Like he started like talking crap about that car. I was like, dude, look, like this is like my own thing. Like you can't force me to buy your car. Like I don't know what to tell you, bro. And he's like, what if we don't give you your cashier's check? I was like, then I'm gonna have to press legal actions. I have a lawyer already that I've talked to, and I'm gonna have to press legal action. And they're like, okay, well, give me a second. And they finally went back there. And they brought my cashier's check back. And then like I was like, okay, what about the deposit? You guys told me it was refundable. Like, deposits aren't refundable. I was like, yeah, but you guys told me. And reluctantly they gave me that $500 back too. So after like spending almost 5 hours at this dealership arguing with them to give me my money back, they finally gave it back. And I took the cashier's check. And I went to the Chevrolet dealership. I gave the guy the cashier's check. They took my Infiniti G35 on trade-in, and I got the car, and I drove it home. And that whole ordeal finally ended. It was just it was a nightmare. Like, my anxiety was going crazy at the time, and I was thinking that I was going to be out $10,000 if these guys weren't going to give my money back. So it's just crazy that I was very negligent in that whole ordeal. And that like I didn't read reviews of dealerships. It's something that I had like never done before, but now I realize it's very important that, especially if you're dealing with a dealership that's like privately owned, or it's like well, I guess all dealerships technically are privately owned, but it's like a, you know, it's like Joe Blow's car lot or whatever. It's not like a manufacturer's dealership. You definitely read the reviews, because, you know, there's a small group of people who work there, and usually like the owners that you deal with, and you can tell like how these people are just through reviews. Like, do your due diligence before you try to go do business with some of these places. So I want to just talk about that, share that story with you guys, because it was crazy. It was super stressful. And like I thought I was gonna have to take these people to court and all this just over a $10,000 cashier's check, which is, if the dealership was legit, you know, they had like Ferraris on their website. Like, can you imagine doing that with like hiring clientele and stuff? Like, there's no way they were like tripping that much over trying to keep my $10,000 when they sold stuff like that was that expensive, right, or whatever. So lessons learned, definitely do your homework before going to a dealership or giving them any kind of money. Like, know what you can afford. If the deal sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And like, just understand your whole credit situation. There's great tools out there like Credit Karma. It's free to sign up for. You can monitor your credit. You know, there's no like impact to your credit score when you look at it. You always heard as a little kid that if you like checked your credit, it would like hurt your credit. But there's tools now where there's like soft inquiries, and it doesn't hurt your credit score. So definitely Credit Karma, other like tools that you have with credit cards, like, you know, you can monitor those kinds of things. But like the good thing about Credit Karma is it's not like FICO. It's actually like your TransUnion, your Equifax score, which are more accurate than like FICO is or whatever. And then use tools that are out there for like financing, like Capital One Auto Navigator tool. It's a free tool on their website, and you can like get pre-qualified on there without any impact to your credit score. And so chances are, if you get pre-qualified there for like a certain amount of money, then chances are like you'll get approved for loans elsewhere for similar money. And like that Capital One tool is a free tool, and it doesn't impact your credit at all. So it's just kind of little things that I've learned. And then, as I mentioned, if the deal is too good to be true, it probably is. Like, I should have known that if I was getting rejected by all of these different dealerships, like there's no way that this one dealership just magically got me approved at good like loan terms at least, right? And then, yeah, read reviews. I should have read reviews and saw people's prior experience, and that would have been a huge red flag, and I would have avoided the dealership. And don't give them anything until you know everything about the deal. Like, don't hand them cashier's check. Don't give them deposits. Don't insure cars or anything until you know the ins and outs of the deal and exactly how much you're going to be paying, the price of the car, the interest rate on the loan, how much you're charging in various fees, etc. So definitely things that I learned. The CTSV deal, I will say, went much better than that. Not all dealerships are bad, guys. Like, definitely they have like this kind of like negative aura about them, but not all dealerships are bad. There are still good dealerships out there. And for like the CTSV deal, I had gotten pre-approved for that. And it was legit through a Cadillac dealership. There was no pressure from the salesman to like buy extra things. And then also like look for financing deals when it comes to purchasing cars. Like if you're gonna like buy pre-owned, look for pre-owned certified deals, because a lot of times like manufacturers will have financing deals on certified pre-owned cars. So for like my Cadillac CTSV, there was like a deal going on. I think it was like, you know, sometimes they'll have like these 2.9% on certified pre-owned, like lower interest rates on certified pre-owned cars. So definitely look for those, because you'll save a lot of money in just a lower interest rate. And like those happen like monthly or whatever, and like on certain models at a certain like on certain months. So look for like certified pre-owned deals. It's definitely not like certified pre-owned in and of itself. You could talk about that for a while about how legit it really is, but if they're having financing deals on those, definitely look for those, because I was able to get one on the CTSV, and it saved me a lot on interest. So look out for those. And then just car dealership best practices in general when you're going to buy a car from a car dealership. As I mentioned before, know what you can afford, guys. Like, do your homework. Look at your income, look at your credit, like look at the monthly payment you can afford, the amount of money you're willing to spend. And before you go up to a dealership, like call ahead and check to see if the car is available. Because, you know, I hear stories all the time of people that don't call ahead. They go to a dealership, there's not a car there. And then you're at the dealership and they try to like force you into buying something else. It's just like very annoying. So definitely call ahead, check availability of the car. And if like you talk to somebody on the phone that's like super cool, like be sure to like write their name down and be like, all right, I'm going to look for you. Hey, Joe, I'm going to look for you when I come to the dealership. Or, hey, Lisa, like you're really cool over the phone. Like I'm going to try to make this deal happen with you. So I'll be coming up on this day and I'll look out for you. Like just like write their name down if they're cool. This one's pretty obvious. Check the Carfax. Make sure you look at the Carfax on the car before you buy it. One thing that is also interesting to know is sometimes when like you get into a wreck, it takes a few weeks or like a few months. It's one of those, a few weeks or a few months before something hits the Carfax. So I've heard stories where people like get into a wreck, they fix the car real quick and they trade it in before it hits the Carfax. So when that car is listed for sale, it has clean Carfax at the time, and then you purchase it and later realize that, hey, this thing got into a wreck and it finally hits the Carfax. And like dealerships use that as a way to sell a car as clean when it's really not. And then definitely research the dealership. Read reviews, cars.com, Google reviews, cargurus.com. All these places have reviews for these dealerships. Read reviews about the dealership. If they're smaller dealerships, make sure you definitely read the reviews and know what you're going into, and make sure there's not like any like slimy or shady stuff involved, right? And then talk to people you can trust about like car dealerships and like just auto loans in general. You want to definitely talk to people that have either been to those dealerships before, you know, they've signed car loans. Like if you don't know anything about this kind of stuff, it's definitely good to talk to people that you can trust that will, you know, give it to you straight. If you have relationships with like credit unions or like banks that do automotive financing, talk to them before you go up and try to just get approved for like a random loan at the dealership, because chances are If you already have a standing relationship with a credit union or a bank, like you can get better rates through them, and it takes all like the hassle out of trying to apply for a loan when you get to a dealership, because they can just give you a check and it'd be just like you buying a car all cash, but you'd be just financing it through them. So definitely talk to people you can trust, and then know what you need to get approved, right? As I mentioned in one of my videos, you need three, like most banks like to see at least 3 lines of established credit. They want to see a good credit score. And then the biggest thing that I didn't fail to realize the first time I tried to buy my CTSV was they want to like see credit age. So like the length of time that you've had a credit card, not just that you have 3 credit cards, but like also the time that you've had them. And for a lot of you younger guys that may have got like a credit card like a year ago, 2 years ago, like I was kind of in that same situation, but there's this thing called adding people as authorized users. Like, so you can ask your parents if they've got credit cards that they wouldn't mind adding you onto. And when they do that, you basically inherit all of that credit history and like that, the stuff associated with that account. So like in my case, I asked my dad, he added me to one of his credit cards. Like I gained 10 years of credit history, even though I had only had a credit card, even though I only had my credit card for like 10 years. And then they'll also like send you a credit card for that account if you get added as an authorized user. So just make sure that you realize that, and you don't go spend money that's not really yours, right? So like I got a credit card, my own credit card for my dad's account that he added me onto, but I didn't even activate it. Like I don't want to use it because obviously it's not my credit account, but I just needed that credit history to get approved. So there are little tricks like that you can do to kind of beef up your credit. And then also like don't fall for the monthly payment trick. I know a lot of dealerships do this. Like when you try to go buy a car, they're like, well, what monthly payment can you afford? And they try to like work you a deal that fits your monthly payment. But like when you do that, you're pretty much giving them the right to charge you like whatever interest rate you want. It's not like you shouldn't go into a deal thinking about or giving them that information of what monthly payment you can afford. You should be trying to get the cars for as cheap as possible, and you should try to get that interest rate as low as possible. So that should be your goal when you're going into trying to make a deal, right? And then look out for just like bullcrap fees that a lot of these dealerships charge, like cleaning fees, tint fees, dock fees, etc. Like all these just fees that they charge you. All dealerships do deals differently. For the most part, they're mostly the same, but they do have small nuances with them. So definitely look out. Like, so if you're buying a new car, my sister experienced this recently. You know how much new cars are because you know that you can find a car's MSRP, and every dealership will charge like a certain amount extra on these new cars because it's how they make money, obviously. But just make sure like you look out for any like fees that's associated with, because like just because like they wash a car doesn't give them the right to charge you like $300 cleaning fee, or just because they tint a car doesn't mean they can charge you $2,000 for tinting a car, because like just like little things like that to look out for. But also at the end of the day, you guys have to realize that a dealership is a business and they do have to make money as well. So sometimes, you know, you really like a car, you know it's really worth this much, they won't budge on the deal. So sometimes, you know, walking away from a deal or walking away from a car that is literally perfect, if they just can't make the deal work, you know, it's not bad to walk away from it and just think with your head, because it's something that I didn't do. I was stupid, naive. I just wanted the car so bad, and it almost screwed me at the end of the day. So definitely just don't be ashamed to walk away from a deal if it's not right for you, right? And so finally, I asked a question on Instagram today. You know, what are some pet peeves that you guys have about dealerships? And so I wanted to go over some of the questions. You know, Blue Monster 891 said everything. Saeed Rahan says dock fees. So yeah, as I mentioned, just fees that they charge you for no reason. Like it's like, oh, we got to charge you $300 just because we printed this paperwork off. Nick CTSV says some selling no-name vehicles for thousands over MSRP. Yeah, I know. Obviously, that's like a huge issue right now. Just like people selling Camrys for thousands over MSRP. It's like that's kind of more of an issue of the current market right now. But yeah, it's definitely something to look out for. Know the true value of cars before going to buy them. Don't just let dealerships charge you whatever for them. And then B195 says, trying to sell you all the add-ons and then making you feel like an idiot for rejecting them. That's so true. I actually had this happen recently with a car that my dad bought for my mom. They wanted to sell an extended warranty, which basically was for the same period of the manufacturer's bumper to bumper warranty. So it was like an additional warranty on top of the manufacturer's warranty. They're like, oh, like, you know, it's for like oil changes or like something that the warranty won't cover. It was like bull crap, right? You could tell it was clearly something that you would never use, but something that you just wanted to make money with, and that the finance guy, I guess, would make commission off of selling. So definitely just be aware of those things. And like, I remember we turned that down. He got like super pissy about it. It's like, oh, like, you know, oh, we have to sell a car with one of these. Like, you can't leave out of here without protection. Like, just like, don't let them make you feel bad for turning something down that you don't need or that you don't want. So there is definitely that as well. So anyways, guys, that's kind of going to wrap it up. I think we're at like the 55-minute mark. I just wanted to hop on here and talk about car dealerships, because I've had some bad experiences at car dealerships, and there's definitely there's some dealerships that will do anything to make a sale, and that would definitely can take advantage of you as a consumer. And so always remember that you're giving them business, and that you don't have to buy the car from them. So definitely go in there, educate yourself as much as possible on financing, on the pricing of the car, on the market for that car, whatever you're doing, and just the dealership in general. So you want to go in there, give yourself as many tools as possible to make an educated purchase and to make a good purchase, and at the end of the deal, at the end of the day, to get a good deal, right? So that's going to go ahead and do it for this episode 2 of the podcast, Drivin and Survivin. Again, everyone, please comment with any feedback you have down below. Like the video definitely, and subscribe to the channel for future episodes. Anyways, it's been your boy Jamal. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm gonna get out of here. Peace.